everyone to the YouTube channel for Cuong Nhu. This is our latest iteration of Reflections of Cuong Nhu history. We are thrilled today to have Ngo-Voss, Christina Ngo, Jessica Ngo, and Alexander Ngo to speak today with us. I'm Joe Schachter, sitting in for John Salmon. Hidden behind the camera is Mark Brandenburg, our whiz at fixing all the mistakes we make during the interview. So, let's get started. And I warned you this question was coming. I would like each of you, in turn, to tell us about yourselves, and if you can, tell us something we may not already know. Oh, nobody's coming. This is a group that I expected would be jumping in on each other, and it didn't happen. Lucky you, Rebecca.
Joe, seriously, tell me about yourself. Well, I went to University of Florida for undergrad and grad degrees. I work from home now. I got married in 2021 to Danny. We have two girls, Chloe and Quinn. Chloe's 2 months and Quinn is almost 6 months. Chloe's 2 years. Oh, 2 years, yeah.
Alexander.
Okay, I'm Alexander. I am 24. I'll be 25 in March. I got my first degree in biochemistry at the University of Florida, hoping to go to medical school. During my gap year, decided I would instead like to go to nursing school instead, so that's what I'm doing currently. I'll be finishing that next semester in the spring. I'll graduate in May, and I love traveling. I don't think that's really too much of a secret, but one thing that literally nobody knows is that actually just yesterday I booked a flight. So there's that.
To where?
To Germany.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Oh, we got to work on our German together. Nice.
With that said, Jessica?
Okay, with that said, yes, I am German, or was German, because I became an American citizen 2 years ago, thanks to Quinn, because he was, it was very important to him. He felt very strongly about being an American citizen so that if anything ever happened, we would both have the same passports. And so I studied and became an American citizen and voted for the first time in my life this year, because I came to America when I was 13, just like your dad did, from Germany, though. And so I never had the opportunity to vote before. I've been in Cuong Nhu 35 years, and I had the privilege of being the stepmother, mother of 1 and stepmother of 3, so 4 kids. And back then we had 5 dogs. As far as other things, I love gardening. I'm channeling my Quinn, and I go to the gym 6 days a week, and things like that. That's pretty much now what I do. And I'm trying to get more creative. I just showed Alexander some art that I started doing, so.
That's great. All right, Christina, we've delayed long enough.
Yeah, so I'm Christina. I'm the oldest of the 3 siblings. I also went to the University of Florida for my undergrad in sport management and a master's in business management. Now I work for FIS, which is a financial technology company, as a sales operations analyst. I have been in Cuong Nhu for 18 years, and I just tested for my Sandan in May, on a sprained ankle also. Other than that, I run the social media for the World Headquarters account, and I just ran my first marathon in October.
Fantastic.
Can I jump in real quick?
Oh,
I
could I
feel
stop
like
you?
I need to also say my educational background.
No, exactly.
Listening to these
I feel like
things.
Zan and I should have talked about Cuong Nhu. We didn't even say anything
So,
about Cuong Nhu.
I have a bachelor's of science and a master's degree in education, but at Georgia State University, I went to Sung Ming Shu first, and that's where I got my black belt. Actually, I trained with Master Mary Davis, who back then was Sensei Mary Davis, and so yes, and I also was the head of the German department at the International School in Atlanta for many years. So there, just to tie it all in.
It leads perfectly into this question for you. Please tell us about your first contact with Cuong Nhu. That'd be when, where, and with whom.
Okay, 1989, and I was waiting on tables while going to college, at a restaurant called Houston, very popular in Atlanta. And bartender was talking about training, working out in karate, and that they were doing a beginner's class. And I happened to be picking up drinks for the table that I was serving, and overheard the word karate and said, "What did you just say about karate?" Because I've always loved physical. I danced, I did gymnastics and all that, so karate was something that was my language, I guess. And so I asked him about the karate class, and he said, "Yeah, come on over." And I went the next day and joined right away Sung Ming Shu, my first instructor, Mary Davis, and the rest is history.
Okay. I know your first contact with Cuong Nhu, but I would be interested to hear how you describe it.
Our first contact with Cuong Nhu?
Yes, whatever your first memory is. And remember, some of that, I was there, so I'm listening carefully.
Well, my first memories aren't of me in Cuong Nhu, but I can give that one if you would rather.
Tell
My
me.
first memories were like going to UNF when you guys were at Osprey Dojo, and us three Madeline was in class, but we weren't in class because we were too young.
Oh, yeah.
And we would just like run around and hang out, and
We would play with Kale, too.
yes, and we would like play in the fountain after, like there was a big fountain. I don't know if it's still, I assume it's still there, the
Yeah.
fountain at UNF. But we would play in the fountain,
It is.
and then like us three would all sit, all of us three in the back of my dad's car on the way home. That's
Yeah.
my first.
Man, I forgot.
Anything to add to that?
That's not the memory that I have. For me, the first memory chronologically that I could think of was actually IATC 2005, I think. It was at UF. And I remember not really knowing anything that was happening, not really anything that was going on. I didn't really know anybody who was there. But I remember my dad had told me, he said, "You're going to take this Tambo class." It was a kid's Tambo class, and it was taught by Master Allen, who was actually Sensei Allen still at the time. He was Godon. And I just remember that whole experience. I think we were, a bunch of us, would hold Tambos, and we'd, toss them back and forth to each other and catch them or something of the sort. That's probably the earliest memory that I could say that I have, but I know I've had many people tell me the stories about how they said, "Alexander, don't go walking around when they're swinging all the sticks." And apparently I knew not to walk around when weapons class was going on, but when it wasn't weapons class, I was still apparently running around in between everybody.
Rebecca.
I have a horrible memory. I definitely don't remember that, and I very vaguely remember this. So when you asked, I was actually thinking about early memories in training. So I thought about the dojo, and I mean, truly what I remember is we'd get there after school, and nobody would be there. We'd turn the lights on, and then we'd sit in the office area and do our homework, pull lean cuisine out of the freezer, pop it in the microwave. Sometimes my dad and my brother would do lunges around the dojo, but I mean, I feel like I was so young. I don't really even.
You're talking about Florida Mining Boulevard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That was my first memory. Was once the actual dojo was there.
Interesting. I was looking for more UNF stories. I know how to get them.
Okay.
Your first memories of them running around Osprey Dojo.
Right. What they don't remember is that Quinn and I would actually meet, and I would load DeMarco in the car with them, and then we would all drive to UNF together because it saved money. My dad liked to save money on gas, so we carpooled together. And then there was that room next to the room the carpeted room that we actually trained in. There was a classroom next to it, and the kids they'd have coloring books and all kinds of stuff. They moved the desks around and then be playing in there. We would bring Legos and different things, puzzles and stuff for them to play with. They would, during warm-up, tend to run around. DeMarco's famous story, being that Scott Smith was stretching his legs and DeMarco was running, of course, not looking, and ran right into Scott's sidekick, and just got knocked over. So they were supposed to learn about awareness that way, but it didn't always quite jive. But they were really great kids, and so they did a really good job of behaving, looking in, and I think Quinn wanted them to, get the taste of it without pushing too much and forcing them too early into the whole thing.
Wonderful. All right, this may have already been answered, but I'm going to give it a try nonetheless. Who was that individual sensei or fellow student other than Grandmaster Quinn who had the greatest impact on you as a martial arts practitioner or simply as an individual, and why?
I'll go first this time.
Thank you.
So my first instinct to answer that question would be that it wasn't just one individual. Because the whole point of Cuong Nhu is that we're supposed to learn from many and become our own individual instructor and gather knowledge from all to create us, right? So then I would say I wouldn't give credit to one single individual because I had many wonderful instructors ahead of me that I took bits and pieces from and became Jessica. But my second answer to that question would be then I would have to give credit to Quinn. Because spending 24 years with him was obviously the longest amount of time that I spent with one highest ranking individual. So I learned many techniques from others, but I learned the wisdom of Cuong Nhu from him. And so that would be, for me, legacy-wise, he's the one that gave me the greatest input.
Yeah, when I think about who were my senseis in Cuong Nhu, or like the people who had, I guess, the biggest impact of like me going up through the ranks, I would say Master Jessica, Master 2, and then Sensei Mark V.
Mark being the way.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And even though, I guess, to the earlier question or your earlier comment about Aunt 2 being hard, yes, she was hard, but I feel like she always said, like, it was such a unique experience, I feel like, for the three of us, because we were also training with Madeline and Liam. So it was like, I mean, dare I say fun, but
And
like,
Georgia was there too.
yeah, and like it was a totally different dynamic than a normal student. So I feel like it was, I don't know, the impact felt different because yes, you're learning from Jessica or Aunt 2, but you're also like, well, they're family. So of course I'm like double gonna listen to what they're saying.
It made for interesting, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Okay.
It made for interesting dynamics at home as well, right? Because you're, in the dojo you're one thing, but at home you're a family, you know? So we never really discussed if that transferred over because they were always respectful and sweet and, you know, kind. And so it's like, there was never an issue between us, but whether that helped that, you know, sometimes I was their instructor and then I was also stepmom at home. I'm not sure if it ever actually dawned on any of us, you know, that we had these different roles that we were playing, students versus kids, you know, so who knows.
I also don't feel like it's fair now that I think about it to not give Madeline credit because Madeline Ngo, our cousin, obviously she's not active in Cuong Nhu, but she was always 1 or 2 ranks, well probably 2 or 3 ranks ahead of me at the time, and she's close in age. She was a strong martial artist, so I feel like I always looked up to her as well.
That's nice.
Yeah.
And Christina didn't mention that Quinn actually gave her an award, even though she says she hated Cuong Nhu during a certain period, which we were unaware of. But she was also helping teach a lot of kids' classes, like extra, and that was the only time Quinn, you know, the way they were raised and actually the way he treated me as well is, you know, it was tougher for us. We didn't test as quickly as others. He always held us back and almost held us to another standard. And so for him to give an award to her, you know, for the way she was teaching as an outstanding teacher already at such a young age was very unusual and special. I hope you recognize that too.
Well, I love teaching. That's why I wanted to get to black belt so bad.
To stop training.
Exactly.
Best training camp memory.
It's not a memory for me or something that I experienced, but rather, I can't remember what year it was. I believe we were in Atlanta at Emory though, and it was Joseph Cordell testing for his knee on. And I remember watching him do his knee on breaks, and he has 2 boards like perched up on these like small little wooden planks, like just about like an inch or 2 off the ground, something of that sort. And the man gets on his hands and he does a handstand and he starts walking over, and he's got his hands on the board, and one hand's on the board, one hand's just on the floor. He picks his hand up, he just goes boom, pushes through it and broke the 2 boards. And I remember seeing that and I thought, oh my God, that's insane. That's crazy. That's so cool. And that's something that will stick with me forever. Like just that sight of watching a man walk on his hands and break a board while he's standing on one hand balancing. He like has enough arm strength and upper body core strength to just hold this one hand here and pick it up off the ground. It wasn't like a quick like, boom, I broke it. He like picked the hand up off the ground and pushed it down. It was just a really cool sight to see.
I remember that break.
So I mean, it's not necessarily my memory per se, but that's something that I would say sticks out to me a lot.
Absolutely.
Like I will never forget that.
You just told it. It's your memory.
Yeah.
I guess that's
your
fair.
experience.
Yeah, not my experience, but I guess it is my memory.
Jessica.
For me, everything comes more from an instructor's point of view. Because I've been an instructor for so long that my memories are always gathered for the students. So for me, every training camp is an exciting memory because of like seeing, you know, preparing for testing like this last year with Christina. And then I'm gonna get emotional. The moment when I got to promote her, you know, we both just had this moment where I just stood there. She had the yellow in her hair for her dad, you know, and it was like the 2 of us doing this for the first time without him. And so every time I feel that we go to training camp and we bring a lot of students with us and we have a lot of promotions, it's such a wonderful moment for the style, but also for the dojo and for all the hard work that we all put into it. So these are the memories that will continue on for me, I guess.
I'll do like a more recent one and an old one, but I guess my more recent one would be, oh my God, what year was it? 2019 training camp, because that was the first time I ever helped anyone get to black belt, and so that's when Sensei Quentin tested for his black belt. And I just remember giving him the black belt and like, well, he says that was the first time we had a real hug, because then I hugged him and I was like, my baby's grown up, like, and then something from like way back when was when we used to have training camp and Sarah and Madeline, our cousins, would go. It would be them 2 in a room and me and Becca in a room, and we would spend hours like putting the beds together in different ways, like making bunk beds, making like mega beds so that we could all sleep in the same room and be like besties.
For you, older memories of O-Sensei.
So this is interesting. When I was training at Sungmin Shu, O-Sensei would come, I wouldn't say regularly, but because, you know, Mary Davis was one of his, they stayed in touch, and she wanted to make sure that he would come. Actually, Ernie Cates came to Sungmin Shu a lot as well, so I trained with him quite a few times. But O-Sensei would do mini seminars, and so mostly training related, going to restaurants afterwards, you know, Manuel's Tavern, which is Sungmin Shu people will know what I'm talking about. Those were events that I did in Atlanta. When I moved to Jacksonville was slowly around the time that he was getting Alzheimer's. And, but there were a couple times that I actually drove him from Jacksonville back to Gainesville to give him a ride home. And one time he and I spent an hour and a half in the car together, and he loved gardening. And he actually was big into roses. And he spent the whole time sharing with me how you trim them and the different types of roses, the smells, you know. And so I bought him a book about roses that because it touched me how he wanted to share his love for roses with me. But as far as training, we had a training session when I lived at the Leawood house. You guys remember the first house? There's a picture of Christina and DeMarco in one of those above ground little baby pools. And this is when they were really young and the kids would play together. We trained in that backyard. I actually have a photo of Robert and Elizabeth, your Uncle Bao, was Sensei, Jason Backlund was there, and myself just in t-shirts working out in the backyard. So that was like the last time we ever trained together. And then after that, there was that regression, obviously.
Most memorable stories about Quinn.
That's all.
That's going to be a tough
Yeah.
one. I understand that.
Okay, I'll go first. Well, I guess I just have been thinking about this memory a lot recently. Like, it's come up in conversations, so maybe it's not my most memorable. It's just like most front of mind. But when I was younger, I wanted to go to Cyprus so bad. I like looked up to Andrea, all of them. I was, oh my god, I just can't wait. Like, I just want to go there so bad. I was also the oldest of us three, so I was the first one who was going to go to college. And I was like, oh my gosh, if I don't get into UF, like this is going to be the worst thing ever that could ever possibly happen in my entire life. Like, I will not recover from this. So, I had to quit all my extracurriculars in high school. Like, my job was to just study for the ACT and SAT, and do good in school. And per my dad, that was his job he gave me, right? Because he also knew, this is a goal Christina wants. And the day I got into UF, it was Valentine's Day. It was February 14th, and it was a Thursday, so we had class. And I was like, nobody can be home when I check, because if I don't get it, I'm gonna have to spend the next 2 hours crying. And that's just a personal thing. Thankfully, I get online, right? I check, and I said I got in, and I didn't tell anyone. People were texting me, they were calling me. I was just not texting anyone back. But on this white paper, I have wrote yes in orange and blue, in big letters, because I knew that was the first thing my dad was going to ask me. And so I drove to the dojo.
Wait, why weren't you at karate then?
Because I was checking if I got into UF. And so I drove to the dojo, which was at Burnett Park, the location we're at now.
I remember this.
Yeah.
And I run in, and I'm wearing this white pea coat, these gray leggings, probably similar to these Ugg boots, and I'm running in so excited, and of course my dad's teaching, and I'm trying to get his attention, and he keeps looking around, and I have the sign over my head shaking it around, and then he finally looks at me, and it was just I don't know, I'll just never forget the look on his face, and how proud and happy we both were. Yeah, that's my most memorable.
I forgot about that.
So actually, this isn't really much of a memory of him per se, but we'll get to it.
Today.
So in March,
I was
in March of 22, I'm still speaking. In March of 22, I went to Costa Rica with 12 friends, and how am I going to start crying? I had spent, I don't need them yet. Maybe I do.
It's okay.
He was very, very passionate about me learning another language. And of this group of 13, I was the only one who could speak any Spanish. And he was already gone. He'd been gone for 6 months at this point. But I remember my friends and I, we went to this wildlife reserve. And the guy couldn't speak a lick of English. Literally no English. And so my friends, they're looking at me, they're like, hey, we're just trying to park, and he's not understanding us. Can you speak to him? And I remember I had this long interaction with the guy at the, ticket kiosk. Eventually I got it all figured out. We parked our 2 rental cars. And then that evening, I was watching the sunset in our Airbnb, overlooking a beautiful infinity pool that we had just a few miles away from the beach. And I remember all I wanted to do was send him a picture of that and say, look how beautiful this is, look where I am right now. And I've gotten to practice so much Spanish and break this language barrier. And I thought, especially for him, being somebody who had to learn another language coming here, it seemed for you, it made me, I feel like being able to break that language barrier gave me so much more appreciation for him and everything that he had to overcome. So I know it's not necessarily a memory of him, but it's something that, for me, reminds me a lot of him, and I hold very dear to me.
You know, he was my best friend, and because he retired so early, you know, we spent a lot of time together every day, which, you know, now in hindsight, of course, was a blessing, right? You know, because time was cut short for us. But I have many little memories, like stuff, not just one big one, like little things, like sometimes he would surprise me and wash the car, and then he would spray a little bit of his cologne in the car, and I'd get in and I'm like, like, what is that smell? Like the whole car was stinking of the cologne, but I was very touched, you know, that he did that. Or, you know, just little things like when these girls got my cars, so it was kind of interesting when they were growing up and it was time to get a car. They, you know, Christina first got my car, so then I got another one. Well, then Becca got the car, so I needed another car, and so Quinn wanted to surprise me with one, and so he blindfolded me and drove to I didn't know where we were going, and we drove to a dealership, and he took off the blindfold, and I was like, oh, I'm getting one of these, and he's like, well, not now, but I just wanted to see your reaction. Well, my reaction was big, but, you know, then it was quite a letdown when it was not now, you know, so it happened like 3 months later, which is okay, you know. But so it's interesting, he left little notes for me in my calendar that would be like 2 months ahead. Like he must have, whenever I was out, gone in the office and written a little note in there, but I wouldn't find it till 2 months later when I got to that week. And little stuff like that. So it was, there's never just one big memory. I mean, there are many memories, you know, and they all just kind of blend together. So that's kind of, one thing I do like, I do want to say, because it's so him, you know, because he was so business-minded and money-oriented. He loved playing these little games with the JEA bill, with electricity and power and all that stuff. So and I actually do that now too, I'm embarrassed to say.
Oh, I know.
Every month we would look at the bill and he would go, how can we beat what we had to pay this month and pay even less next month? So another light needed to be turned off, you know. And I like little cozy dim lights at night, you know. And as soon as I'd leave the room, he'd be like turning off the light right behind me, you know. Anything to save like an extra dollar here or there. But, you know, it paid off in the long run. So he was very good like that. He was a very simple man. He was very generous to others, but with himself, just very, very simple, you know, didn't have to spend a fortune on clothing or anything like that. And, you know, actually took pride in wearing the same workout clothes. Not the exact same, but every day in workout clothes. These guys started, you know, giving him Christmas gifts with shorts and things like that, you know. So whenever he put on a pair of jeans, I would actually be thrilled because he looked like a different man, you know, because all you see is shorts all the time. So, you know, it's little stuff like that, but it's different when you're spouse versus child and father.
Anyone else want to add anything?
I remember in middle school when I was on the track and field team and I was doing long jump, he came to all of my meets and he would always just take it upon himself to go be the person that grabs the broom and would always, like, you know, smooth out the long jump pit. And he would do that for everybody just on his own. Nobody told him to do it. Nobody designated him or assigned him to do it. He just did it on his own. And it didn't matter whether the athlete or whomever was from my school, from another school, just everybody who went, he was always like, good shot, man. Dang, yeah, you go. Like, oh, man, yeah, you know, whatever. And he was always just so uplifting. He always loved taking these other people, it didn't matter who they were, and finding something about them to praise and to uplift. And I always thought that was something really, really positive about him.
On that note, real quick.
All of these.
Yes, like at the gym, it's so interesting, especially after he passed. You know, Quinn and I would go to the gym. I would only go back then about 4 times a week, you know, but he went every single day. We would go to seminars and come back on a Sunday afternoon, and all I wanted to do was lay down on the bed, and he'd be like, no, I gotta go to the gym. So he would go to the gym. I didn't, but he was so dedicated. That was his outlet, or his hobby, away from Cuong Nhu. And so but he never told anybody at the gym that he was a grandmaster. Not very often, every now and then spoke about martial arts with people at the gym. So after he passed, when some people found out, and we talked more about the martial arts, they were just in awe that this man was so humble and didn't make such a big deal about who he actually was in another community. And the same thing what you were just saying, Van, about I was doing some squatting with at the gym. And there were some ladies I was training with, and he came over and he took the weights off, he put the weights on, and he encouraged them. And so when he passed, these ladies came up to me and said, wow, your husband was such a remarkable man, so encouraging and positive, it's just an inspiration and a motivator, and I think these are all such traits that really truly exemplify who he was.
He had a knack for just becoming friends with anybody. You could be a complete stranger, just a bystander on the corner of the street, and he could still walk up to you and just be like, hey man, how's it going? Shake your hand, and then have a 30-minute to hour-long conversation with you, because if you know Cuong Nhu, you're not talking to him for 5 minutes, you're going to talk to him for a long time. But after that conversation, you'd walk away from there, and the two of y'all are best friends now. And kind of going back real quick to what Jessica was mentioning about him going to the gym, I do remember there was one time when he actually texted me, I was probably in high school or so, like 9, 10 p.m., like pretty late, and he's like, hey, like, I just got back to, like, my flight just landed from Seattle, like, been traveling all day long, about to drive home and then, change, go eat something real quick and then go work out. Like, he was dedicated. The man made sure he was going to the gym every single day. You could not take that away from him.
He was also a grandmaster that mopped the floors at the dojo. We made a point of always being there early and cleaning and showing our students, leading by example, and mopping the floors and cleaning up, and he had no problem doing that. He didn't just come in as I'm grandmaster and I'm top dog. He was walking with the people.
Why have you stayed involved in Cuong Nhu for so many years?
The last word I just said, the people. The love of community, the love of, well, obviously the kids, love. For me now, the legacy of Cuong and everything that I've learned, I feel like it's my duty and my desire to want to share while I can still share it with others. But just the sense of acceptance and belonging somewhere and being loved for who you are. And I think that's what makes Cuong Nhu so unique. It was such a diverse, eclectic bunch of people from all walks of life, and yet we all put on our white geese and stand together, and there's no judgment. Everyone is encouraging and rooting for the other. And I don't think I'm sure there are many other organizations or things that you can be a part of where you experience that. But because I've put my heart and my soul and all these years of dedication to teaching and traveling, it's like a passion project, or my life's passion. It's so intertwined, becoming an admin director, and having done that now for 27 years almost, and then working my way up through the ranks and becoming master and traveling and having a chance to give back. It's just what I breathe.
And don't forget being head of school.
Oh yes, that too. That's also been. It's just all part of me that it doesn't occur to me that it even needs to be mentioned. It's just everyday thing that we do. Christina's doing that a lot as well. She's already been a head of school once at Cyprus. The way she contributes now, it's just very natural to her to, have we thought of this? Have we done that? And yesterday at the testing, Ethan talked about leadership, how Cuong Nhu creates these leaders. These three have been leaders since so early on. I think when they were young, you didn't even realize who you were becoming already. But now as adults, what you have to offer to the rest, is just so incredible.
What do you see as the future of Cuong Nhu?
This is such a hard question.
Yeah.
Don't look at me.
Ask a smarter person.
The picture went this way.
Stop saying that.
Growth.
Growth.
That's Jessica's answer. That's not your answer.
I know it would be hers too. No,
She knows it would
she
be.
grew Cypress, right? Remember, you helped rebuild a dojo. That's growth,
Progression.
which is
Perfection.
perfection. It's crazy, all the sayings that we use. Vision without action is a dream soon forgotten.
I have all the t-shirts. Oh no, I gave up a couple for your wedding.
You did? Then there
It should be on
the quilt, yeah.
the quilt.
Yeah, I bring that to training camp every year. I sleep with that quilt. Well, hence, it used to hang on the wall, which is why I need to clarify why I'm now saying, most people sleep with a quilt.
What is the most important, and forgive me, this is in quotes, teaching of Cuong Nhu?
The teaching you do for yourself. Because, and that's kind of, I would say, echoed in the first code of ethics. Because how can we as instructors know that we are preparing our students, preparing the other people, the next generation of Cuong Nhu martial artists, if we ourselves are not taught well, if we are not well informed, if we're not up to speed on the curriculum, on techniques, on proficiency, on all of that. And so ultimately, I think the greatest teaching is to ourselves, but it doesn't necessarily stop there from that physical aspect in terms of how good of a martial artist are you? Because you also have to think about the teaching you do to yourself mentally, how you grow as a person, as your character throughout the style. And I feel like the style has shaped that a lot in me. It has influenced a lot of my own personal growth, my own personal beliefs and philosophy. So I would kind of just circle back to that and say that I think the most important teaching that we do is for ourselves. That doesn't mean that teaching others or what we're teaching others isn't important per se, but I think to maximize that efficacy would be best to focus on making sure that we are teaching ourselves.
Yeah, I'm gonna take the complete inverse. I don't agree. I think
That's
the
fine.
most important teaching, at least from my perspective, is teaching and growing others. And maybe this is biased because I didn't care to even train myself, and I only wanted to teach and help others. And getting my Nidan or Sandan was so different than helping all of the people who I've helped. Even yesterday, promoting my 2-round stripes, I was shaking. I was so proud of them. And obviously I cried when I got to Sandan, but even then people are like, why did you put, Jacob Ali and Quinton in your demo? You should have had higher ranks. Well, but they grew in that. And obviously, as you're helping others grow, I'm just straight up focusing on them. I don't even care about myself, but deep down, it is growing you as well. And you're learning things about yourself that otherwise, if you only focused on your own growth and your own development, I feel like you wouldn't have gotten there.
Isn't that so interesting how all of our brains think differently? I wasn't even thinking what either of you said. I took it so literally, and the whole time my brain's like, oh, 3 O's, duh. I feel like for me, there's no coincidence that that's one of the first pieces of philosophy that you learn. And I feel like outside of even Cuong Nhu, I even use that. They don't know. People don't know that I got it from Cuong Nhu. I'm just in my dialogue when I'm trying to have certain conversations, and I say, you have to have an open mind, arms, and heart. And I'm like, I got that from Cuong Nhu. So for me, of course, obviously that helped me all throughout my training, but I feel like in my own personal life as well, it just, aside from everything else, just always allows me to recenter and just think about, okay, how can I have that, in any situation I'm struggling with, how can I have an open mind, heart, and arms towards this?
And I love every one of these answers because I agree with each one of them. And just to add to it is that I think that's what makes Cuong Nhu, well, we know that's what makes Cuong Nhu so unique, is the philosophy. because most martial arts styles don't have that. And I think the more these guys grew up, when we do public speaking at our dojo, as you know, we require our students to put philosophy into their public speaking early on. So we saturate them with philosophy. And I agree, not just the 3 O's, but of course that's our foundation. When you start internalizing the philosophy, you carry it out into the world. And then when you start speaking to people, you speak with a different kind of wisdom just by using some of the bits and pieces of our philosophy. And I remember Quinn telling the story of how when he was younger, probably like, I don't know, what was he like? He said 18 or something, driving with his dad to different events. You know, his dad would talk non-stop, kind of like he did with you guys, non-stop about philosophy with Quinn in the car, which is what he did a lot with these 3. And what's so interesting about that is because of that, though, you're saturated with the information and you become this much wiser sounding individual at a younger age. And so when people now, you know, some older gentlemen at the gym always say to me, that man was so wise. The things that he would say, like the 5 Ds of a winner, you know, stuff like that. They were like, how does someone know that? Well, because of Cuong Nhu philosophy. So I think O-sensei had a lot of philosophy, and some of it, you know, was a little too much even for me, the 10 C's of this, and, you know, the 10 don'ts and all that kind of stuff. But there were certain ones that I tell people like Eli and them, when they go to job interviews, throw little bits and pieces of that into your interview, because people don't hear that kind of language. And that's the unique language, I think, of Cuong Nhu.
Fantastic answers all the way around. If you had to leave a message to future generations of Cuong Nhu students, it would be...
Train hard. Every generation has a change, and we're attracting different types of students now than back in the day. And the mentality of working out, depending on what dojo you go to, has shifted a little bit. And that was like his biggest pet peeve. He was all about reps, reps, and more reps. You know, he said martial arts is not academic. It's still physical. And so in order for the style to exist and succeed, the training it's the martial. We love the arts, but you can't lose the martial. And the martial is the hard part, that you have to dedicate a daily practice. Put determination in there, you know? So that would be for sure. And then, of course, growing the love. That would be my answer.
Why was Quinn chosen as Grandmaster?
Well, okay, this is interesting. There was a group of masters, and when O-sensei started getting sick, at first, there were a couple other names that were being mentioned. But in the end, Ernie Cates stepped in, and some others as well, and said that they felt that it should be the son of the founder that should take over the style. And because Quinn was the one that always spent the most time alongside his father, he's the one that attended all the events, he's the one that ran the dojo in Gainesville, he did most of that. They felt that he was also the most knowledgeable. And so but he had to be voted in by the masters. So that was very important, that he was elected to be Grandmaster.
If you were conducting this interview, what questions should I have asked you?
I think a question would have been like, how were we able, and Jessica, you kind of spoke to this, but able to like make the divide of sensei / then master and grandmaster to stepmom and father when we weren't in the dojo? And my answer would be, honestly, I don't think either. It was all the same. Like, we had the same respect for Jessica as our instructor as we did for our stepmother, and same with Grandmaster. I would never challenge the Grandmaster, and I would never challenge my dad. I'd not talk back to Grandmaster, I wouldn't talk back to my dad. Now, for positive or negative that it was all blended, I don't know, because poor DeMarco, we talked Cuong Nhu nonstop. every single analogy was, if you've got a 1 green stripe here but a 2 brown stripe here, you can't do this and that. And it wasn't even about Cuong Nhu, but it was almost the language we all spoke, just because it was embedded. So I think, yeah, I don't really even think I were really able to separate the two. At least I wasn't.
I have no preconceived ideas, so for me the questions that you asked were great. I mean, I think our family, we can talk and we can always throw a lot of fillers in, you know, so for me it's like whatever comes our way, we can answer it.
There were no fillers here.
I brought a few things that I
Christina
wanted
just
to
asked
share.
Absolutely.
But
Now's the time.
I don't want to interrupt if
Now's
we're
the
still
time.
okay. Just let me go back.
Christina thought you were going to share your Cuong Nhu question. You said that would not be appropriate.
Yes. There's so many.
Oh, are there?
I wanted to share 2 things. So let me start. Did you have a question?
Why do you wear the yellow gi?
Why did I wear the yellow gi?
Why did he wear the yellow gi?
Because from what I heard was that somebody did one of the tournaments. He started wearing the yellow. He also had the yellow sparring equipment, and so then he had that necklace made, the Super Q, which they gave him one as a gift, and now Danny has that necklace. So
If I had to guess, it's because he was colorblind and yellow was a color that popped.
I was good.
So
That's what I thought it was.
he just, I assume, maybe he just thought like, I'm gonna pop out. I'm gonna have a lot of attention with, something like this.
yes.
And, if I look good and I shine, then, that can help accentuate that attention.
So we have, this is the gi, the Super Q gi, which actually Osprey Dojo made this for him. That's how old this is. This is over 25 years old.
Mm-hmm.
They dyed it for him. I don't know if you remember this, Joe. You were part of this. This was a long time ago.
Before my time.
And then they gave this as a gift to him. So that's where this one came from. And I feel like it's time that Alexander has that. And then one of the things we did is we did the Super Q patches as a family. And when we sold them, we put all that money in the bank. And so what we've done as a family, and we're going to continue doing, is offering a GMQ scholarship every year. But what's different about our scholarship is that it's not for a student, it's for instructors. So that's our gift to the style for the future of Cuong Nhu, to also recognize instructors that give so much of their time freely, because that was near and dear to his heart, but also more importantly to our heart. And so that's the way we wanted to honor him. And then the last thing I had was this used to hang in our house on the wall by the kitchen, in the pantry area. And so this is Quinn's Pride and Joy. I feel like I need to sit down. This thing is so long, but I want to make sure you guys can see it. So Quinn had a thing about height. It was very important to him, height. And one of the stories I remember is Alexander's friend Sebastian coming over just to hang out and play and whatever. And so at one point your dad was like, Sebastian, how tall are you?
He said 6'1".
Yes. And your father was like, you're not 6'1", come here. And this was hanging on the wall, and he made him stand against the stick where all the kids' measurements are on here. So even DeMarco's on here. And
Is Sebastian on there?
no, but he made him stand there. And,
No, but he had marked out 5 feet, 6
Yeah,
feet,
it's all
and
marked
the
out
inches
on
and
here.
stuff. So he's got the
and he
measurements.
wasn't. And so, Quinn was so excited because he's so good at seeing, spatial heights or whatever. And so he just was like, I knew it, you're not 6'1", So anyway, that's something I want to hand off to Becca so that we now can have Chloe and Quinny on there. And then we're going to continue handing it off one day when Christina has little ones, so that it's like a family stick.
A family stick. Everybody should
Yeah,
have a
so
family
that
stick.
everybody gets added to that.
Oh, Danny's on here.
Yeah, he put Danny on there.
Wow.
It's all in his
Dang.
writing, so it's very. And he wanted to bring that. It's a baseboard.
Is this DeMarco's weight? His weight.
Did he put the weight on there?
174.
No, that's definitely
No
not
shot.
DeMarco.
Oh, then maybe that's my Daniel. Oh,
Yeah, so there you go.
thank you.
Those are the things that were important to him.
Thank you very much. This was great, and this touched me an awful lot. Okay, so you know.
Thank you for
Thanks for having
Yes,
us.
thank you. We're glad that we had the opportunity to share some fun stories, a different version of the man that most people are used to or know.